coaching. Kuinua coaching.
Welcome to the Kuinua podcast today, everybody. We have got Marlis Hubner with us. How are you doing, Marlis?
I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me.
And you're joining us from Germany today.
Yay! Cold, rainy Germany.
So I'm really excited to talk to you today about self-leadership. We've talked a lot about this on the podcast, and I think it's just so important to be self-aware and to be able to be aware of your emotions and be able to lead yourself. And this is exactly your topic, isn't it? So would you like to kind of give us a background of how you've got where you are and what you do now?
Yes, absolutely. I would love that. And yes, it's absolutely one of my favorite topics to talk about. So to give you a little bit of background, honestly, so I'm 40, and about 10 years ago or 12 years ago, in my early 30s, if you actually looked at my life from the outside, you would say it was pretty perfect. I was following the book, so to speak, right? I did it, I had done my studies, tick the box. I did my PhD, tick the box, married my sweetheart from college. We had our first son. We both landed a 6-figure income in the same company, which I remember everybody's like, oh my God, you guys are in the same company. It's so amazing. And so really, we bought our first home in 2009, did everything in the first year. And so we kind of just, we went along and led our lives, so to speak, or, happily ever after. And I was pretty successful in my job. He was pretty successful. We were kind of managing everything together. And we'd always agreed that he would be working, I would be working, I would not be staying at home. And then in 2013, my daughter was born, and things kind of got a little bit, shaky, I want to say, because she was not the easy baby who would just sleep and eat. She was pretty much of a nightmare in everything. And so she just really tested our limits, and we were running thin, trying to manage 2 corporate careers. And I remember, yes, we were stressed, but I remember also thinking something is wrong here. Something doesn't feel good to me. Why am I not walking on air? I should be happy. I should be feeling so grateful about everything. And I wasn't, and I really wasn't. And I remember I just felt like something was wrong with me because I couldn't appreciate what I had. And I had literally turned from this happy chappy kind of, ambitious woman who was wearing a mask in the office, quite frankly. In the office, I always looked like, oh, she's got her stuff together and she's got her act together. But at home, I was very much stressed, short-tempered, very angry. I would yell a lot, the tiniest little things would just kind of get me, would trigger me. And I had turned into a person I really didn't like. It was as simple as that. I did not like myself, in especially the mom role that I had. And that's how my journey started. So really my trigger points were all those moments I was just very not in control of my emotions, and I was very reactive. And I was very afraid to, honestly, to not raise good humans, and that my kids would leave me one day and they didn't want to have anything to do with me. And so that's how I started my journey into tapping into anger management, quite frankly. And then, and it's 7 years now later, almost, I want to say. I've learned so much, and really it's we have pretty much what I've learned is that we don't know anything about us. We think we know us as humans, but we really don't. And a lot of us are working on mindset work and be mindful and have a growth mindset. But oh boy, it's the emotions that really run the show.
So I think that's such an interesting point that you make, because today I was on a business call and I had exactly the same conversation with another girl, and we were both talking about how we completely ran ourselves into the floor, and then one day we were just not the people we wanted to be, and we said, why are we doing this? And that's how we ended up setting up our businesses. So it sounds like there's a lot of there's a lot more out there of people not being as self-aware as they could be.
Yeah, honestly, like I call it the autopilot mode. Like we just run on autopilot mode all the time. And if you think about it, it comes from the way we grew up, right? We, especially as women, we've been conditioned to be perfect. We've been conditioned to do it all and to have it all. And so you are literally not self-directed anymore. You're being completely externally controlled. We are not aware of that, so we think we're doing it because that's, you know, the things we need to do. But especially when you come to this, you know, or let me say, well, I grew up in the 90s, right? For me, it was like, of course I'm going to have a career and of course I'm going to be a mom. But honestly, when I was there in the middle of it, once a sudden I was like, it's just a lie. It doesn't work. It's a lie. And now I'm back to, yes, it does work, but the way we thought it would work, like the way it's been implemented into us, into like, this is the mom ideal you need to live up to. And this is like the professional career woman ideal you need to live up to. They're like on opposite ends, you know? And it's like you have angel and devil inside of you arguing. And that's what, like, you're trying to fit in, you're trying to please and fulfill roles that are so opposite of each other that you completely lose sight of yourself. And what I found is, like, when we're being externally controlled, it's just, and what I mean by externally controlled is, let me just give you an example. So I work with women in corporate, for example, and we help them reintegrate after they come back from maternity leave. And so one of the things, like, they're smart women, they want to move up the corporate ladder, but one of the things they see is, okay, my boss sends me an email at 7 a.m. and my boss sends me an email at 10 p.m. and they're like, I can't do that. I don't want to do that. If it means I have to do that in order to be promoted here, I, like, you know, they feel defeated. But what they see, they make that their truth. And so that means we then let that, what we see, what is the obvious, we then let that guide us. And so being aware that that means you're actually being externally controlled. Whereas when you move to being self-directed, it's by, okay, I see these people are sending emails at 7 a.m. and at 10 p.m., but here's how I'm going to do it. And here's how I'm going to show up. And this is how it's going to work for me. And when I do that and I really stand in my power, I can still be successful. But you have to, like, that takes a lot of self-awareness and a lot of emotional leadership building, because you have to get rid of all these, okay, what are people going to think of me? And I can't do that. And are they going to like me still? Am I still going to be appreciated? Like all that stuff that is, you know, like in the back of our heads, all those fears, we have to start becoming aware of them. And then we can separate and leave the autopilot mode.
There's so many things to talk about in what you just said. I mean, one of the things that strikes me as well is this whole female reintegration, and where if you have maternity leave and you come back, you might not have a job to come back to. It might be a different role. You might have been left behind because you've not been doing the professional development. You've then got to reintegrate into whatever the new kind of ecosystem is. And then you've got people that are kind of sending emails at any time of day or night. And actually, that's wrong in itself, because actually you should be able to have time for yourself. But that is also our problem for actually having the email or the phone on at that time, because we shouldn't be anywhere near it. So we shouldn't know that that's even been sent. So given all these challenges that we face specifically as females, actually, how can we be more aware, and what can we use to our advantage to progress in these circumstances?
So what you can really do to be aware is, like, find your emotional triggers. One of the things that's completely changed my life is to start looking at what triggers me. Now, I started with anger. Anger is a very easy emotion to identify. It's very obvious, it's very present, right? But you can do this with anything. Like, what triggers your sadness? What triggers your frustrations? What triggers your resentment even, right? And it's like, because when we, and you can pick any situation, you can pick people basically, right? So let me give you an example with the kids. Our kids, for example, they trigger the heck out of us because they don't listen. But the reality is, and so what do we think? It's like, well, if you started listening to me, then I wouldn't have to yell, for example, right? And so if you take a situation and let's say you've asked 5 times nicely, can you please clean up the room and then come to for dinner? Can you please clean up? And they're not doing it. And you're like, I told you, like, da, 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 da. So what's really going on? And you can do this with any situation. So what is actually really going on is, it's not the fact that they don't listen to you that triggers you. What they're really triggering inside of you is all the times you were not heard. All the times nobody listened to you, right? And that happens to us all the time. And so what I do is the very first step is identify those triggers. So if I feel I have to reply to this email at 10 p.m., what do I feel?
Angry.
I feel like, yeah, you're angry. You feel angry, or you feel like literally defeated because you're like, or like if you say, okay, I make the choice not to reply. How do I feel? What's coming up? What are my fears that are coming up? And so it's like flipping those things around and really looking in here to understand what is going on. And then what I do is I use a very specific tapping technique. And then I go and really sit and tap that feeling out. What most of us have not understood is that feelings live inside of us. They create, I think, Joe Dispenza says, our body is the memory of the past. And so these feelings, your emotions, are way faster, way deeper than your thoughts. And it's about getting to know your emotional coding, deciphering your emotional coding, and really understanding what is running my program here. And so when we then go and face our emotions and really be with our emotions, most of us don't know how to be with our emotions. Most of us just want to be up here, want to feel good, want to feel happy, and try to ignore, the not so feeling good emotions, basically. But if you are actually embrace the not so feeling good emotions, and you'll learn to love to be with them, you become a free human. That's to me been like, find your triggers, clear them, and what will happen is you become like literally like you become almost fearless. It's like you stand in your true power. You know exactly what you want. It becomes so clear once a sudden. And the reason it's not so clear is because we have all these emotional gunk stuck inside of us, which keeps us blurry and insecure and keeps us acting out of constant approval that we're seeking from other people instead of just getting it from us. That's one of my other concepts is like, you have to put yourself first. And by that, I don't mean go and take a bath and take a spa. No, I mean like literally live, lead, and love yourself first. Because when we do that, we can give from a place of wholeness, from a place of completeness. But we don't do that. We parent from a place of lack, and we have no idea that we do that. We do our careers from a place of lack, and we don't know that we do that. And that's when things become hard.
You're listening to the Kuinua podcast. If you want to ask a question to our experts, just go to kuinuacoaching.com and you will find the link to the podcast where you can leave us a voice message or send us an email, and we will ask your question direct to the expert. That's kuinuacoaching.com. Kuinua Coaching is set up to offer mentoring, coaching and courses in leadership, negotiation and soft skills. If you're interested in finding out more about what Kuinua Coaching has to offer you, you can get in touch via Facebook, Instagram. You can type Kuinua into Google. You can email us on kuinuacoaching@gmail.com or go to our website at kuinuacoaching.com. That's kuinuacoaching.com.
Did that answer your question?
That was brilliant. Thank you very much. No, it's all so interesting. I've seen this specific tapping technique that you're talking about on the Apple TV documentary, I think with Prince Harry. He was using this technique and he thinks about his emotion and he taps as he's doing it. I think there's other kinds of ways that you can do it where you think through it, and you can use eye positioning as well. Are they called EMDR or something, these techniques?
Yeah, I've heard of EMDR. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's, and I can't remember the name of the other one, but they actually kind of, they bring you out of the emotion so that you can look back onto the event and not associate such a strong emotion with it. So you can actually try and move past that. And then the next time something happens that, like you say, triggers all of that not being listened to, it's not so triggering. And so you can then move forward. And then instead of screaming at
Yeah.
the kid, you can say to the kid, do you want to just talk to me about why you don't want to clean your room, or you're not finishing your dinner? And it might, there can be all sorts going on in there. You're peeling the onion with a child to find out what the real problem is.
Yeah, and the problem is usually it comes back to us. So it's like what I've seen is like my life started becoming easy and in flow when I really flipped everything back on us. And this is, and we don't do this, right? It's so easy to say, we always say, oh, but you said this and you did this. And because he is like that, because my boss is like that, I can't do that, right? But what we're actually doing when we do that is we give our power away. And to me, when I'm like, oh my God, it's so true, but it's so painful to flip it around on you and look inside of you. That we don't want to do that because we've never learned to do it. If you actually think about it, we're just scared of emotions. And so what I like to tell people is like, make your emotions your best friends. And your life will become amazing because they're just energy. They're just energy. That's it. Nothing else. And when you can be with the intensity of that energy, it will actually go away. They will go away. And the triggers will go away. And so the tapping technique, there's EFT is the classical one. I've flipped that around. I've modified that a little bit to really get to the core of it. And so, for example, I use it a lot in parenting, yes. But one way you can really use it is, for example, if you face a difficult conversation, like a career conversation, you want to have, let's say, a salary increase conversation, like all the thoughts that are going on in your head, it's like, oh, he's not going to give it to me anyway. And we have so much negative self-talk going on, right? So I teach the women, it's like, go and tap all that stuff out. Like right now, I have a woman, she's going to go for her dream job in a really big interview. And so she taps and taps and taps. But then the other thing you have to, what I call it, the anchoring in. So you tap the crap out and then you bring in the good stuff. What most people do wrong is they put in the good stuff. Like they do the visualization and the gratitude and the meditation and stuff. And so what most people don't realize is that all of that emotional heaviness inside of us is, like, I like to refer to it as the gunk. It's the garbage that's living inside of you. And so when people come and it's like, oh, you need to meditate to calm down, or you need to be grateful and you need to have positive thinking, you know what happens is, like, the positive thinking is like you spray the perfume on the garbage and it's going to smell good for a few days. It's going to really keep you up and it's going to keep you going motivated, but the smell is going to come back out. It's going to come back out. And so tapping is really like clearing. It's helping you to get that emotional gunk out of your way. And then you have an empty, nice space to bring in all the good stuff. And that way it just feels easier to do, and also easier to stick with you, basically.
Why do you think it is that as we kind of grow up, we're more concerned about the external? Do I look like this? Do I have the perfect career? Do I have the perfect holiday? Do I have the perfect social media? I need to do everything and balance everything. Why do you think it is that we end up becoming adults and all we're focused on is the external, and we completely miss the most important point, which is the internal?
Because you were parented that way. Because your parents did not parent in your interest. And I know this sounds like always shocking to parents, but I really want them to hear me. I mean, I was shocked when I found this out about myself. But the truth is, we really don't parent in our child's interest. We parent in our own interest. We parent from a place of lack. We need our kids to give out a certain picture that we never were, right? Like, we need our kids to be good for us. We need our kids to be successful. We need our kids to be happy, because we never managed to be that. And the reason we actually do that is because we need them to love us, so we can finally prove to our parents that we are worthy of their love. It's a lot of deep psychological stuff going on. But when you actually realize that we parent our kids because we have a hole in here that needs a vessel that needs to be filled, then you understand that you condition your kids to not be their true self. And that's why we raise kids that constantly are in this need to please other people, to make other people happy. And we totally confuse kindness was always putting other people first. I'm not saying, like, there's nothing wrong with the concept of putting other people first if you don't do it at the expense of yourself. Let me like, the best example is take 2-year-olds. You have, let's say, two 2-year-olds playing with each other. And you know, the way they play with each other is like, one plays with a toy and the other one just grabs it out of their hand. Like they want to play with it, right? And so let's say the child that takes the toy and is your guest, what do we typically do? We say to our child, oh, that's okay, honey, you can share, please share. Be so nice and share. So what do we teach them? We actually teach them the other person is more important than you. And that has dramatic consequences. And we only see them when we grow up. Because in our brains, we have associated, you don't share, you're a bad human. You not sharing means you're not a nice person, right? Whereas what we should really like do is say, honey, I understand that you really want to play with this toy and it's so great, you love this toy, right? So that's okay, you play with it and then we can go and share as well. And then like, right, it's like acknowledge the need of that person first and bring in the sharing. Like we want to do both, but we constantly always say, like, you have to share, you have to be kind. And yes, you have to be kind, but if you don't know how to be kind to yourself, you will always only be limited, or you can always only give limited kindness to other people. And it's the same thing. This is what I tell my moms. They come in and they're so angry and they're like, I love my child. And I'm like, no, like you don't love your child unconditionally because you don't love you unconditionally. And you can only love your child unconditionally when you know how to love yourself unconditionally. And that means you love yourself with all the brightness, you love yourself with all the flaws. Like you love yourself when you actually are angry. They're like, no, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, but that's it. Because then you're able to see the other full human. That's when you're only able to see your child's need. When our children backtalk to us, they do it because they've been hurt. And it takes the awareness and building the skills of looking beyond the obvious behavior to what is actually really going on. And we don't know how to do that because we weren't parented that way. And so we have to first parent ourselves. And then we can pass it on to the next generation, because otherwise we just repeat the cycle.
So these are really huge concepts, and to address them must take a huge amount of time and a huge amount of work. So on that, would you like to tell people where they can find your resources on the internet?
Yes, absolutely. So if you want to meet me more often, you're very welcome to join the Mom Leadership Group on Facebook. I go live in there 3 to 4 times. We have a series called the Conscious Champagne Chat series that women love. It's 10 minutes, short snippets where I talk a lot about mom leadership and a lot more details around these concepts. And other than that, just please feel free and visit my website. There's lots of different ways and programs of how you can work with us if you want to.
Thank you so much for being a guest today, Marlis. It's been absolutely fascinating.
Thank you. Pleasure.
You've been watching on YouTube or listening on an audio platform to the Kuinua podcast. If you like what you're hearing, then don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any amazing content, and don't forget to leave us a review.
Kuinua coaching.